Hey everyone, let's clear up some things about the Bible and women and abuse. Because recently I was talking to a group of young women. Now, these young women were in their 30s, and they were, rightfully so, confused by the dynamics of woman, man, husband, who is in charge, abuse, and what the Bible said. I mean, this is what brought about this video. One of the young ladies asked the question, does the Bible hate women? And then cited several verses in Proverbs about, a dripping faucet, a contentious woman. It's better basically to live in the corner of a house or to just be broke and away from them. Just anything, that women were just these despicable creatures. Well, there's all kinds of religious doctrine that shackles women from being in ministry, from marketplace positions, as well as truly shackles them in the home. So does the Bible hate women? By the end of this video, you will know the answer. So there are several common misconceptions about the roles of husband in the marriage. And these things can lead to misunderstandings and conflicts. Matter of fact, I used to think a lot of things that were nefarious and just wrong. For one thing, let's talk about authority. Authority doesn't equal control. Authority is a matter of just order. See, some people believe that as a man being the head of the household, this means that he has complete control over his wife and his family. Now, you may not realize this, but there are many individuals that believe that and emphasize that one woman has to be submitted to the man, when in actuality, the Bible is about mutual submission. Now, what about the common misconception about the husband's primary role as the financial provider? In other words, that's all he's got to do. He provides the money, and the wife has to deal with the nurturing, the teaching, the emotional support, and that every other aspect of the family is laid at her feet and her door. No. Emotional detachment. How many times have you either witnessed or been a part of a man being very stoic and his expressions and his emotions just, no, they are unbending, unyielding? Well, see, that's not at all in any way that you can have a relationship that has any true intimacy to it. And as we kind of covered a few minutes ago, that also leaves the parenting duties to fall on the wife, and the man, if he is just the provider and nothing else. You see how many times the weight and the burden is then placed on the woman in this religious oppression form. That the wife is secondary, that the notion that somehow the husband needs to have precedence in leading, and it doesn't really matter if he neglects her emotionally, because a healthy marriage can't work that way, right? Some believe that marriage is a one-way street, kind of a my way or the highway situation. But no, the ideal husband should love, respect, and support his wife for a successful marriage. That it is absolutely the effort of both partners. What about conflict avoidance? Conflict avoidance. Some husbands think that their role is to avoid conflict at whatever cost, whether that is putting their foot down or being passive aggressive and not stating their mind or their opinion. No relationship. We all know that relationships don't work that way. Their traditional role, or what people like to, in these instances, how am I going to say this? Demand that just because the man, the gender role, that just because the man is the man, that somehow he has this extreme power over every situation. So understanding and addressing these misconceptions, we're going to now see a healthier and more fulfilled marriage for both partners, where both partners are valued. We are tripartite beings. God is a tripartite being. The unity of his church and his body matter. So now let's talk about love and care and the responsibility of a husband toward his wife. Because the Bible does not hate women. And if you know this from being in the chain of command somewhere, the more power and the more authority you have, the more responsibility you actually have. See, a man is supposed to love and sacrifice. In Ephesians 5:25 and 28, husbands, love your wives just as, how many times, I have heard this so many times, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and he gave himself up for her. Okay, but just quoting it doesn't mean anything. He literally, on a cross, marred more than any other man, sacrificed himself for us. That's the sacrificial love. And the understanding and respect in 1 Peter 3:7. Husbands, in the same way that you consider living with your wife and you treat them with respect so that nothing hinders your prayer. It says, Peter is saying there, that if you do not treat your wife well, you hinder your own prayers. Nurturing and caring for a wife, Ephesians 5:29. After all, no one hates their own body, but they feed and care for their body just as Christ did for the church. See, this suggests that husbands should nurture and care for their wives, just as they would for themselves. Now, I will interject here that I think that so many people have so much self-loathing that becomes an issue with this. Protection and provision. In Colossians 3:19, husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh to them. This verse is calling for lovingness, gentleness, and avoiding abuse in all forms. Mutual submission is also in Ephesians 5. Submit one another out of reverence for Christ. We all know how we want to be treated and valued, with mutual respect. It doesn't stop just because someone has said, I do. And even though it is true in Proverbs, King Solomon, in many verses, says how horrible it is to live with a contentious woman. This is what I also reminded these young ladies. I reminded them of everything I just told you. But that King Solomon did not do what he was supposed to do. He married heathen, wicked women, idol worshipers. So that is why there was not unity in the house. Remember, over in 1 Timothy, Paul reminds Timothy that a man that doesn't take care of his own family, he is worse than an infidel. See, these references collectively show us what a husband should do. A husband is called to love, to nurture, to respect, to provide for his wife, to reflect upon how she is built. The scripture even tells us that he should study her and know how she operates so that he can bring out the best in her. Why? Let's go back to Proverbs. Let's wrap it up with Proverbs 31. Now, I will also tell you, I don't have the verses before me to cite to you. But there are many times in Proverbs that King Solomon writes, and you can see he says for you to listen, sons, listen to your fathers. But he also says to listen to your mothers. And then Proverbs 31. God has made sure that he laid it all out beautifully. And every other verse in the Bible bears that in complete beauty. For the Proverb 31 woman, we know she provides for her own house. It says that her maids, her servants, they don't have to worry. They don't have to worry when winter's coming because everything is set and everyone is going to be well fed and warm. That she goes and she purchases land. That's definitely a business dynamic. It doesn't say that she carries her husband to go do that. It says that she does that. That she is a worker with her hands, fine linen and silks and purple. That she meets the merchant ships. That her reputation and her character are so well known that her husband sits in the gates, which means that her husband sits in a place of prominence and authority because of her. Because she has not only not brought shame on him, but she is so powerful, so dynamic for her family, for her community, that she has brought so much honor upon her husband. It doesn't even say exactly what he's doing in the gate. Now, in the gate, that's a place of government. But it says there in Proverbs, because of her. So go to Victoria Moore McDowell, mcdow.com. If you have questions about religious oppression, if you have questions where you think or you have been taught or you believe somehow that just because you are a woman, you are less than. You are not less than. Do you realize that God could have created creation any way he wanted to, right? He knew that we were going to fall. He knew of the greater plan of redemption. Nothing is a surprise to him. He lives outside of time. The beginning, the end, and the beginning, all of it. And he, in creation, made it so that the Redeemer would come from a woman. That life itself is birthed from a woman. We are not less than. Ever. Ever. And abuse is the misuse of anyone or thing that is contrary to its purpose and its design. And you are made in the image of God. And do not let anyone treat you less than.